Hello and welcome to Call Bank Sports. The Jazz dropped a close one tonight to the New Orleans Pelicans for their 8th loss on the year. And frankly, the Jazz just looked really tired tonight. I mean, this has been a long first half of the season for a lot of teams. And yeah, it is only, 36 games, 35 for the Utah Jazz and a few less for other teams. But there's been a lot of back-to-backs. There's been some long road trips, and it's just been rough. You've seen these last few games where the Jazz really struggled against Miami, where frankly they didn't have the greatest game against Orlando. Orlando is not a good team, so they were able to pull out the victory. And tonight, I mean, they started off a bit slow in the first quarter, which is typical of this team. They kind of get their gears going, and in the second quarter they did what I expected. They were able to get up and take a 5-point lead to the half, but instead of doing what they're known for in the third quarter, which is having some of the best just third quarters in the league, I believe, if you break down their defense and offensive ratings and take a look at those, that they're the best team during the third quarter. They let the Pelicans get up by 13, I believe, and they let them drop 40 points overall. And frankly, from there, it was just an uphill battle. They got close with some, good looks from three and some lucky foul shots. Well, lucky misses and some good makes in the last minute or two of the game. And they had a chance to tie the game there. And Mike Conley took, frankly, what was an ill-advised three. I know that Quinn Snyder's a lot more experienced than me. I feel like once they didn't have a three, I would have liked to see the Jazz drive the ball to the paint and try to make that happen sooner rather than later. And just, they had 2 timeouts. So it wasn't like you used your only timeout there. You would have been able to either try to get a steal. If you got it off quick enough, I believe there was 27 seconds left, you would have possibly been able to get the ball after playing some defense and not have to foul, at least in the first few seconds there. So wasn't my favorite look from the Jazz, and frankly kind of reminded me of, I believe, the Minnesota Timberwolves game earlier in the year when the Jazz weren't able to inbound the ball and got a 5-second penalty. Frankly, this is only the second time, I think, in the whole season we've seen the Jazz with the ball at the end of the game trying to win it, and both times were against talented but mediocre teams, and they weren't able to pull through. So that's one thing that obviously you'd prefer, just to never be in those close games and to not have to have some late game heroics, but they're going to need to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen, especially come playoff time. You don't want to just kind of choke in those clutch moments and drop the game. So we'll see if we get some closer games in the second half of this season for the Jazz, and if they can learn from it. It's kind of a pick your poison. You don't want to be in close games since you don't want to lose, but you really want that experience. The Jazz played relatively well in the clutch last season, if I remember, and this year they've just avoided it and haven't had to. So I'd imagine they're a bit rusty from that perspective. Taking a look at what this did to the Jazz in the standings, they're still, let's see, it hasn't been updated quite yet. They're 3 games ahead of the Lakers, I believe, and it looks like the Clippers have played one more game, so they're 3.5 games ahead of the Clippers. So still solidly in that first seed. They'll definitely take the first seed to the All-Star break, and they have one of the easiest schedules to finish out the season. But it's going to be you still have to watch out for Phoenix, and Phoenix is really the only other team that is in striking distance if they just had a miracle, if they had a miraculous second half of the season. So Jazz are pretty much locked in a top 4 seed right now, but I definitely think they're capable of getting that 1 seed, and nights like tonight don't help. Again, the Jazz were tired, but that happens, and you need to win these games, especially when you have a chance like this. So Thankfully, though, this isn't the Jazz of the last few seasons where they'd lose a game like this and it would be disappointing, and you'd go and look at them being fourth or fifth in the West and just kind of thinking, dang, we need to win these games to get home court advantage. So, seen a lot of improvements, but just because you're doing well this year doesn't mean you'll do well next season. So the Jazz really do need to win now. And this is their best chance at a championship in the last 23, 24 years. It's something special to watch, and I don't want to just, jump off the wagon because we've had a couple losses to Miami and New Orleans these last few games here. But with how things have been going, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jazz go into the break 27-8, just because Philadelphia is a good team. I believe they're on a homestand right now, so they haven't been traveling like the Jazz, and Joel Embiid only had to play 20 some odd minutes tonight, so he'll be a lot more rested. Rest is, gold in the NBA, and that's why Kawhi Leonard has moved toward load management, and other teams in the NBA are starting to look and see when they're able to rest their players. So I'll take a look at the box score and the team stats here really quick. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments, and let's get this chat going tonight. So Bojan had what I believe was a career high tonight. Not career high, sorry. Season high tonight with 31 points, followed by Gobert with 22 and Clarkson with Mitchell with 21 and Clarkson with 20. So overall, it was a relatively good night when you look at scoring wise for the Jazz. 124 is respectable. When you look at the plus minus, Gobert was the only player in the plus with +2. Mitchell and O'Neal were the worst of the starters with -4. And Favors and Ingles had rough nights. Ingles was -11 and Favors was -7. So really looking at it, if I were to just kind of pull out one player who struggled, whose struggles hurt the Jazz the most, it's Joe Ingles has to be one of the ones up there for consideration. He was 0 for 3 tonight, 0 for 2 from 3, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. So he just had a rough night, and if he's able to have one of those threes fall, all of a sudden down the stretch looks a lot different, and it's possibly going to overtime where the Jazz eke out a win there. Conley was 4 for 12 from the field, 2 for 6 from 2, and 2 for 6 from 3. So rough night for him. Gobert was 9 of 13. So overall, well done. Bojan was on fire. O'Neal had a respectable night. And Mitchell was 7 for 21, 1 for 8. So the Jazz really just needed 1 or 2 more shots to fall. And Mitchell, Conley, and Ingles all were having just the type of night where that could have happened. And if they were just a bit better on their averages, the Jazz swing this game and they win it. So definitely ball didn't bounce the right way for the Jazz, and that did lead to the rough night that they had overall. Taking a look at the Pelicans, though, you can't discredit what they did. Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram both put up 26. LaMelo Ball had 23. Redick had 17 off the bench. Just dominant scoring performances from 4 of their of the 8 players who played tonight for them, and they were able to put up 74 points in the paint. That's the most points in the paint scored against the Jazz in over 25 years. So really tonight, I mean, they exposed the Jazz in the paint, which doesn't happen frequently. I don't think that other teams have players who can do this. Point Zion of the last 15, 20 games has been incredible. It's just that much harder to guard the pick and roll when the player handling the ball is 6'7", 200 plus pounds. He's an absolute giant, and you can't just have Conley or even O'Neal guard him. He's a special player. There's a reason he was the number 1 overall pick. There's a reason he's talked about as a franchise player, talked about as a Hall of Fame, being talked about as if he can make the Hall of Fame. And, he's an all-star for the first time, possibly could have been an all-star last year without his preseason injury. And we're going to see a lot from Zion. I'm excited to see where he goes and what he does in the league. It's disappointing to see him have such a great night tonight. Would have preferred to see him miss a few more shots and for it to swing in the Jazz's favor, but that's not what happened. So really, when I look at the box score, there's nothing that's just cringeworthy to me about what the Jazz did. They were 39.5% from three, 45.5% from the field overall. They missed 3 field goals, free throws, but that's not terrible. They only turned the ball over 9 times, which is really good for them. So overall, just points in the paint absolutely hurt the Jazz. And thankfully, there's really no other team that's built like that have a player like Zion in the league. So I don't think we're going to see any teams taking advantage of this, but in the future. But you lose some, you win some. So, well, thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. It looks like just kind of a slower Monday night, especially with the Jazz loss. So, if you have anything you want to chat about, leave that in the comments, and I'll get to that before we end the stream. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and go Jazz. I'm going to cut it there for our podcast edition just to do a little pitch. If you guys like listening to podcasts more, please go take a look. We're on Stitcher. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We'll all get this uploaded right after the game, and it should be available for anyone to watch tomorrow morning. But it looks like, frankly, we've just got a super slow stream tonight. So thank you for everyone who tuned in, and I am going to end the stream. So please come join Dale Wednesday night after the 76ers for our postgame then, and I will be doing a postgame for the All-Star game on Sunday. So let's hope that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert have some spectacular performances. Thanks again for tuning in, and go Jazz.